It's Tuesday night, and we're gonna talk Small Town Throwdown, the Noogvember Hoedown list. Woo!
Noogvember.
Then I'm Matt, the Noog, as as you people know, and I'm joined by my co-host Aaron and one of our newer hosts, Gabe. Introduce yourselves, people.
Hi, I'm Aaron Newbaum. If you've probably seen me around on Twitter and stuff like that, but yeah, I'm a big Cruel Boys player, big competitive player. Yeah, super excited to talk about this. Gabe?
Gabriel Pacheco. I pretty much am mostly a competitive painter. I dabble in the competitive playing realm, but primarily painting.
All right, well, before we start talking about lists, I just want to talk about the event itself. So this is our very first Small Town Throwdown, and what is Small Town Throwdown versus Old Town Throwdown? Essentially, Small Town Throwdown is supposed to be geared towards smaller events and smaller GTs where they have its own prize pool. So while it is still a part of Old Town Throwdown, Small Town Throwdown, we're allowed to experiment, even though we mostly use like Tom's Pack. For example, I am allowing the new Ogre Maw Tribes book at this event, so even though that may seem unorthodox to what we usually do, it's just an experiment to see what it would be like having a book that comes out on the same day as the event. So yeah, I mean, I looked at lists already, reviewed them. So yeah, and it's going to be all good. And then the event itself is being hosted at a venue called Los Caballeros Sports Club in Fountain Valley. So if you drive there and are attending the event, or you just want to watch, when you get there, all you have to do is just follow the sign straight, and then until it leads you to a brown gate, and then the event itself will be in a ballroom/gym where we'll have about 42 players competing for the master of the hoedown. So yeah, that's the introduction for the event and the venue. And then let me pull up what the potential prize could be, because I feel like this is really important.
Yeah, everyone's got to know.
Yeah, so let me get to that really quick.
What are they competing for now?
I wish I prepared this earlier, but
the glory of the Master of the Hoedown title is obviously number one. But
yep, yeah. Let me just copy and paste it in here. Oh, whoops. Okay.
How does one use internet?
There's all right. I think I got it, people.
Oh yeah.
Let me change windows. All right, there it is, people. It's a hat made by one of our locals, Trish C. She's awesome. She made the Old Town Throwdown logo and the Small Town Throwdown logo, and she's also our resident Slaanesh player. So of course she's the queen of degeneracy. So shout out to her for making this hat. So yeah,
real nicely with that
Thank
belt.
Yeah, I will.
Trish is she plays special event. She's in the event as well, and honestly, her list is pretty good looking. Not gonna lie. So I'm excited to see how it performs.
So now we're gonna start the dive in for lists. So instead of going through each and every single list, this time we're gonna each of us are gonna talk about our top 3 or top 5 or whatever number lists that we really like at Small Town Throwdown, the Noogvember Hoedown. So yeah, I mean, to start off with that, let's start off with your top picks. Aaron, let's go. The champion of Old Town Throwdown's Summer Bash.
Throwdown champion, so my opinion is the only one that matters.
All right, just tell me which list are we looking at first, and I'll scroll to it so everybody can see.
We're looking at Noah's Sylvaneth list. Noah, honestly, he goes by both, so Noah, whatever. He doesn't seem to care which one it is.
All right, can everybody see this on stream?
It's my number 3 list in general for this event. It's a really, really interesting list. Like, it's very unusual. I've never seen a Sylvaneth list like this. I think it's really powerful. It's running 2 units of 10 Gossamids, which I have never even heard of someone trying in even a casual game. But I know that Noah's really, really good at shooting armies. He plays Lumineth a lot and Stormcast and stuff like that. He's very tactical player when it comes to shooting. And 10 Gossamids is a lot of Gossamids. And if you don't know how Gossamids work, they're pretty powerful shooting, not crazy damage output, but they're pretty solid shooting. They're really mobile, and when you charge them, they can basically just go psych and back out. So they're really hard for melee armies to deal with. So this list is powerful, and I like what it's going for. The reason it's not like I would almost give it like a higher ranking, except for I think in the meta of this tournament, when you look at what the actual list that got brought, there is a lot of shooting, which is kind of its weakness in my opinion. But I do think this list has a lot of raw power and a lot of tactical flexibility going on in it. Yeah, that's my thoughts. You guys, what do you guys think about this list?
So to start off with what I think about the list, when Noe first showed it to me what he wanted to bring, I looked at it and I started laughing because I'm just like, oh my god, if this goes into the right matchup, it could really ruin somebody's day. So, as Aaron said, besides the fact that on a 2-up, they can move, they can unleash hell and then move right after, allowing them for a lot of movement shenanigans and doing more wounds on 6s to hit, the Spite Rider Lancers can bring back models. And I think in the hero phase or at the end of the combat phase or something like that. So this list actually has a lot of durability that it can bring with the Spite Rider Lances, and the Spite Rider Lances actually hit like decently hard.
Yeah,
So,
especially yeah. They're like not crazy hard hitting, but they're decently hard hitting. And like you said, yeah, you have the recursion, so he keeps leaving fights. So even if you shoot a few off, he's regenerating guys. He's being pretty annoying. It's a lot of shooting power, a lot more than you would see out of pretty much any Sylvaneth list. So I'm really excited to see how it does. It might fall on its face though. Like let's say if it fights 5 shooting armies in a row, probably not going to be very good.
yeah, the only counter to it is shooting because the Gothsmith Archers have a 5-up save, and if it goes against a lot of the Ogre lists, which premieres the new Iron Blasters, which hit really hard, that could give them problems too. Or they could do really well because Sylvaneth actually can hide in trees and they can't be shot at. So that's their biggest advantage in the shooting matchups if he plays it right. And
yeah, I do feel like he's balancing on a knife's edge, but if he can play it really tight, he can win almost any matchup here. And I do have confidence in his play skill. I mean, I've seen him play. He's really good at playing a 5-turn game. So yeah, I think it'll do well. I'm kind of expecting like a 4-1 type result from it, but I think it's a really cool. I wouldn't be surprised if 5-0 is just because of what people brought to this specific tournament, but I like it.
That's spicy.
Yeah, it's definitely a different Sylvaneth list than what you typically see. Especially between the other Sylvaneth players like Nick and Roberto, it's completely different.
Yeah, I've never seen a list like this before, so it's super awesome. So if you want to any more thoughts?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, Noe always brings a spice. When recently at SoCal Open, he was abusing the Hell On wording, where it's like if you have a unit within 6 inches, you get double shots. So he brought 50 Sentinels and a bunch of Foxes, which was really painful for most people to go against. But I dabbed on it with BOC because I just have too many wounds. But yeah, I mean, it's strong. He likes playing this kind of style. It's like his meaty style, but like he just knows how to execute it well. So yeah.
So I think after that, I guess I would like to hear what Gabriel's like number 3 pick, if you had to pick one for your number 3.
Number 3 actually is also my favorite list. It's gonna be Slave to Darkness Ben.
Okay.
Running 18 Vanguard. Love it. Absolutely love it. As someone who's always been a Slaves of Darkness player, just like everybody else recently, seeing 18 Vanguard on the table is just going to be killer. Knights of the Empty Throne, it makes them leaders, and he shoves in 3 chariots for a little bit of flash as well as his battle line. So it's really cool. It's really fun. The Vanguard are able to come back on a 5-up if one of the units dies. Their leader unit has a 6-inch pile-in along with making it so you can't retreat from them. So there's a lot of shenanigans, and it's old school Slaves of Darkness book. So they can save stack on several different units, and then they have reroll 1s on their saves by all being Mark Zink. So that's definitely my favorite list that I think is going to sneak in there into the top 5-ish.
Yeah. I think that list is super cool. I actually wrote notes about that list too. I didn't pick in my top 3, but I definitely thought that list was super dope. It's so many Vanguard, but I like that it's all MSU. That's my favorite thing about it, actually. There's not like 6-man units, because those are to deal with. Honestly, like as an opponent, the big units are easier to deal with than a bunch of like these units that are really tanky, medium damage, but pretty fast, really annoying. Have those that one objective ability where they can reduce your numbers, so they can still take shit off of you. It's
Mhm.
gonna be tough for a lot of armies. Gonna have a hard time dealing with it. I don't think it looks that scary on paper, but I think it's gonna be really scary on the table.
Yes,
So yeah, I like this
absolutely.
play.
Yeah, I mean, what I really like about this list too, and I guess to talk about the player, Benjamin Boardman. So he's a Age of Sigmar player from the Pasadena, Los Angeles area, and he comes from what we jokingly call the Lost Tribe, which is the Geeky Tees Age of Sigmar community, which has been built up over the past year, from what I understand. And they went from having 0 players to having 16 to 20 man play days and RTTs often. Gabe, you play there now because you're working all the way
Mhm.
up north. So yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about your experience about Geeky Tees, share a little bit
Yeah,
about
I
it.
mean, I've been there several times. I hope to go back again tomorrow because I am up here again for work, which is, it kind of sucks that I'm away from my family, but, I get to go and enjoy a weekday game with some of the locals here, which is pretty awesome. They're all really cool people. I know Dave is building that community up really well, and we're all of us, I think, are fortunate to have that kind of growth in a specific area because it builds the whole community for Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone I've
Oh,
played is super fun.
okay.
It's super chill, so
Okay. So I apologize to the stream. I might have messed up. I think I showed the the wrong person, but Benjamin Boardman, still that's
No,
important.
you had the
Oh
right
no,
one.
so this was the
Yeah,
correct one. Okay, I thought you were talking
yeah,
about
you had
Ben
the right
Hosking.
list.
Okay, I
No, you had
confused
the
because
right
they're both.
list. Yeah.
Okay, they're both named Ben, so I was very confused. Okay, but yeah, to, to bring it back onto the topic, Benjamin Boardman, he's our local Golden Spoon champion. He always plays for what's fun. He always goes for what's unconventional. So we personally love him. He always runs things silly, and then when he talked about running this list, I think this is his like swan song. His last debut of old Knights of the Empty Throne before he gets to play the new one, which is I think a lot better. It's a lot happier for you SCD players.
Which is
yeah. Plus, he's
banned at Small Town. I'm sad at you, Matt, but
You're not even
ogres
playing.
are in, slaves are out.
slaves not. Yeah, that'd be a bit jumping the gun a bit on that one. I think with the slaves, but well, so I think we pretty much covered that one. What about what's you, Matt? What's your number 3 pick?
So definitely my number 3 pick is going to be Evan Markham running, let me pull up his list. He's going to be running Soulblight Gravelords Legion of Blood. I really like this list because even though, yes, Jeremy Vessier did craft this list, I actually do think it's strong coming up in our local meta and against the variety of lists that are being brought to Small Town Throwdown. So essentially what this list is Soulblight Gravelords, Legion of Blood, and Legion of Blood got a White Dwarf buff from from one of the magazines, and essentially each vampire gets to have they can get bonuses to cast, like +1 to cast or +1 to attacks, which is the huge buff because before it was mediocre. So in this list, he's running a Vampire Lord on foot as his general with Masters of Magic and Arcane Tome, and it seems like he opted to go with the spell enhancement, which is it gives you an extra spell for all your wizards, which is really really nice. So he's going I can't pronounce this pinions. That's what I'm gonna say. Essentially, it just makes it it just doubles your movement, makes you go fast. Invigorating Aura is a spell that all the vampire lords, including his named ones, have, which is bring back models. But the cast goes off, and he has Levitate to make somebody fly. And then he has Neferata in this list, and there's a reason why Neferata is really crucial to this list, which I will follow back up with. So she has Decrepify, which is either -1 to hit or -1 to wound. I know it's a big debuff. Same thing with Vigor, Fading Vigor. And then her command ability is that she can make a unit -1 to hit. And then this list also has Kato, which is the new vampire lord, the named one, where he can give himself plus 10 to movement. I think it's plus 10 or plus 6 or plus 16, but I know it makes him really fast. Or he could choose to give himself plus 1 to cast, or he could choose that every wound roll equals to 2 mortal wounds each. So when he goes in, he's about doing 10 more wounds, assuming all the damage goes through, which makes him like really slappy and really versatile. And he's, a flankers that, nobody can ignore. And then he's running Manfred. Manfred can make a unit wholly within 12, or not just a unit, all units, plus 1 to hit, plus 1 to wound. And then Manfred's special thing is that start of combat, he could choose to teleport away. So he could charge somebody, or whenever he gets charged, he could just fly away out of combat outside of 9 of other enemy units, which gives him a lot of board presence. And then he's running 2 units of Black Knights, I believe, in Bounty Hunters, and they'll actually do a lot, even though the stats of the Black Knights don't seem that strong, but they're there just to clear chaff. And then he's running Skeletons, and then here is the crux of the list, is 10 Blood Knights. What does 10 Blood Knights do in this list? Essentially, 10 Blood Knights are buffed by Neferata, who has a spell that can make them unrendable. So they will effectively ignore all negative modifiers, but they can still benefit from all-out defense, Mystic Shield, and the like. So this Blood Knight block will be given a unrendable save. So, and then if they do all-out defense, for example, they'll be on a 2-up, and then her command ability makes them -1 to hit. So 2-up, unrendable, 10 Blood Knights, -1 to hit. Nothing's killing that unless you have a lot of mortal wounds. And it's essentially a anvil and a hammer that can move around and just contest objectives. And then because Blood Knights can't be locked down because they can charge, they can retreat and then charge again, makes them really nice. And then Graveguard are always great because they just hit like trucks. I've seen 20 Graveguard kill a Gargant and even Archeon in 1 turn with a lot of mortals. And then he's running Horrorghast. So the crux, or the whole idea with this list, is that he wants to really control the board. It doesn't really look to table, even though it can, but essentially it wants to control the board and just slowly like suffocate the life out of lists, which is fitting for a vampire player. And this is actually the only death list. So they'll probably be winning. Actually, no, they're not the only death list now because Matt Jones recently submitted his Nighthawk list, which we can look at later. But yeah, I mean, Evan's one of our local players. He does consistently well at events. He's always getting 4-1, and he's the best overall champion from San Diego Open, and he will be representing SoCal at the I think he's at the GW Open Masters event. So yeah, I hope he does really well, and I could see this making top 5 or even going 5-0. So
yeah, that's the biggest thing about the list. It's really, I mean, the list is strong, but I think it's the pilot that really is going to push it forward. You talk about Jeremy Vessier crafting the list. Well, when you have strong players playing solid lists, that's really what drives the high win percentage.
Yeah, I agree. And this is definitely one of those lists that definitely it has tools, and the more tools you have in a list, the better players can utilize it. So it's definitely one of those lists that rewards being really good. Like some armies, Gargants, it doesn't really matter that much. This list has this. You can do so much with this. One of the things I wanted to point out is I really like Blood Knights as an anvil unit in general, because unlike a lot of anvils, you can't just lock them down. Like you were saying, they can basically continuously all game be where they need to be if you can't kill them, and that's a really powerful tool to have in your arsenal. Honestly, it's really hard to deal with that. My army can deal with it. Most armies can't deal with that.
But yeah, I mean, also the thing about Blood Knights I forgot to mention is that they get bonuses depending on what kind of unit they kill. So I think if they kill a troop or battle line unit, they get +1 to attacks.
I think it's only in Castelli Dynasty actually, but
okay, never mind then. Yeah,
but they're still going to get he's going to give them +1 to hit, +1 to wound. They're going to be doing solid, not crazy damage output, but solid enough to clear medium units, especially 10 of them. So they're doing damage all game. Like you said, it's not a tabling army, but it's going to just grind you down over the course of a 5 turns and just win the mission, which is the best way to win games, honestly.
Yep.
So yeah, this is I could see this doing really well. So good luck to you, Evan.
Yeah, I have faith that he's going to do real good. I mean, he always plays super well. So I expect him also to do really well. So I guess we're going to my number 2 list here. My number 2 list is Kyle Callip, his Fire Slayers list. I really like this list in particular. I'm not a huge fan of Fire Slayers in general. I think they have a lot of weaknesses, and sometimes they win games because people don't know how they work. But like, there's some really, really bad matchups that they just suck in. But what I like about Kyle's list here is that it doesn't go all in on anything necessarily. It has like a twofold strategy going on because it's got 3 magma drops in it, which is like they help Fire Slayers a lot because they're fast, they're pretty high damage up, but they get you around the table, which normally Fire Slayers suck at. But a lot of lists are running like 4 of them, and then your rest of your army becomes very small. He's only running 3, and he's running the 20 Sling Shield Berserkers, the Volkites. And he's running the kind of combo of having a large unit of shield Volkites and then having the Battlesmith, I think it's called, which gives him a 4+ rally. So he's got this unit of 40 wounds on a 4-up save. There's like throwing axes. They're pretty mediocre at best in a fight, but they give him this like brick that can hold ground while his magma drops fight. And I really like that about this list because I keep seeing lists that are like magma drop, magma drop, magma drop, magma drop, and then they have like 1 unit of 10 of the expensive berserkers. I know it's hard to clarify because there's like 18 fucking berserkers in this army, but those armies like they really struggle to play the mission on the more complicated missions that aren't just like right in the middle. And this one I don't think will. I think this one can do that, and it also is better against shooting than a lot of the Fire Slayers list because 20 Volkites is just really hard for shooting armies to get rid of. And he's just going to have those guys on the table, basically. And they're going to be holding objectives, killing small units and stuff like that. In a matchup that he would normally, as a Fire Slayer player, really hate, I think he has a lot more game than most Fire Slayers players. And in the meta of this tournament specifically, there's a lot of shooting that got brought. So that choice, I think, is really going to pay off for him. Or at least I hope so. And also, Kyle is really, really good at playing like melee armies that aren't hyper aggro armies. Like he's consistently like playing these really kind of armies that don't look like they have that much damage and finding a way to just do a ton of damage with them across the game. So like I think he's going to pilot it really well as well. It's his sort of army for sure.
Yeah, I think the one thing you said that really nails the puts the nail in the coffin is Fire Slayers aren't really big in our area, so a lot of people don't know exactly what to do against them. I was looking at the list and I'm thinking, I don't even know what half of these units do because we rarely see them on the table in the local area. So I think coupled with he is a strong player, and then you mix that in with a list that we generally don't see, and you're going to have him upsetting a lot of different people who normally wouldn't succumb to that.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Plus, all the Fire Slayer models all looking the same. It's like, which guy is that? Oh, it's the guy with the same base that looks the same.
Yeah,
but it's a funny Fire Slayer thing.
Yeah,
I do have
naked babies.
I have one like criticism of the list that I wish there was a way you could find a way to fit the like the firewall or something like that, and the grand strategy is damn near a guaranteed grand strat where you just summon in a invocation, whatever they're called. Because I wish he could fit that, but I don't know what he would do to make that fit. So it's kind of like, well, I don't know how he would fit it, but the grand strat I think is a little bit tough with that. But the payoff is that his list is better tuned for the meta of the tournament. So
I think to also, because I've gotten into Fire Slayers recently, because I bought a friend's army off for cheap, I also could talk about some of the more intricate things about the list that we didn't go over yet. So the Battlesmith is running Null City and Icon, which essentially gives all Fire Slayers wholly within a certain aura a 5-up spell ignore. I think it's either a 4-up or a 5-up spell ignore, but essentially this neuters like big casting armies like Sylvaneth and Tzeentch. So, our local Tzeentch player, Shane, hates that thing, which is great. And then, because with how Fire Slayers work, they have a rune that they can pop once per game at the start of their turn. So for example, one of the runes that they can pop is +2 to movement, which is massive for the Magmadross and the rest of the army. They can pop a 6-up ward. They can pop +1 to hit once per game, or +1 for melee, and then another +1 hit for shooting. And Fire Slayers is an army that really cares about executing the combos perfectly, because if you do not play this army perfectly, or you don't know when to execute like each rune, then you most likely will have a difficult time. But because Kyle really likes playing dwarves, and because, as we know, Kyle, he's very unconventional with how he plays, which has served as like a strength for him locally and when he travels to other states, because he's always getting 4-1s on Nighthaunt.
Yeah, keeps
I think,
narrowly missing 5-0s, like just skin of his
Mhm.
teeth type stuff.
yeah, and then also another thing about the list, I don't know if we glossed over it, but he's running a Knight Incantor for a once per game auto unbind. So you get
Right,
another edge against like lists that need that one spell to go off.
yeah. I wrote that in my notes, but I forgot
Yep.
to mention that. Yeah, so you're saying the null shading icon in that, they give him, like, he's super good against magic. The sling shields are really good against shooting, and then the magma drops are just generally good, and especially good against melee when they bleed all over you. So he doesn't have the bad matchup situation. So yeah, I think it's gonna be good, and he's a super meticulous player. He plans his game out really well, which Fire Slayers rewards you if you're the type of player who can do that, who can think, what am I gonna do in 2 more turns from now? So I think he'll do well. I think he'll do well. I hope he does well also, because like that'd be I kind of hope he 5-0's, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think he could definitely do it. I mean, the shooting ogres might make that a hard time, but with 4-up rally and with how tanky this army can be, like I think he can do it. And also to shout out Grimlock in the stream chat, Fire Slayers are good into shooting because you can't tell which are the heroes. I feel like that's another low key strength of this army, because literally most of the units look the same. So, and if you don't fight against Fire Slayers a lot, you're actually gonna have a difficult time keeping track of, your target priority, even if the player keeps
Yep.
saying it over and over again. So,
Yeah, it's hard to know which one of the characters is important against your army, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers that one. So what about Gabriel's number 2?
My number 2 list, I honestly, I really had a hard time deciding between my number 1 and number 2. But I really think my number 2 list is going to take the top spot at 5-0 in the tournament. And that's Greg with his Bloodtooths. So, he's using Scooter's list from the Nova Open. But once again, it's a great list piloted by an amazing player. You have the Fungoid Cave Shaman in there for the extra CP. You have Destroyer on the Mega Boss on foot, which gives you +3 damage and a single turn. He's got 8 attacks. So he's pretty much mowing down anything he goes after. Mega Bossy as the command trait for the Maw Crusher just essentially lets him do the movement in the hero phase to 5 units. So they're definitely flying mighty destroyers. And that mega boss already is doing movement shenanigans with Fasten. And then you have 4 squads of Gore Grunters, 2 at 3 and 2 at 6. Those 3-man squads of Gore Grunters just go in, delete Shaft. They force your opponent to deal with them, and then once they either choose something or get deleted, then those 6-man squads of Gore Grunters just go in and wreck the remainder of the army. So, once again, it's an amazing list piloted by an amazing player, and I honestly think if I was a betting man, I would put a ton of money on Greg winning this tournament.
That's a big vote of confidence for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to fight this list. I mean, I obviously it's going to be a game either way, but like this list looks scary to me too. I agree. And Greg is so good at he's really good at like knowing exactly how to make favorable trades and controlling space. And I think Scooter's list rewards players who can think in that way. It's not quite as hard hitting as some Iron Jaws lists, but still hits really hard. But it's really good at using the table compared to other Iron Jaw lists. And I know Greg can absolutely milk that for every ounce of what it's worth. So I agree he's gonna be somewhere at the top for sure.
Yeah.
It's possible to predict exactly, but yeah, I definitely have a high confidence in his performance on this.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I played against the same list in SoCal Open with my 5-0 BFC list. He was actually my 4th round, and even though I did beat him in that game, he did give me a really hard time, and I feel like if I don't play perfectly against Greg, he'll just just beat you outright and just demolish you, which is honestly every game I play against Greg, I always sweat because I know that he's very good about measuring things and when to pull the trigger with his list, because I feel like even though this isn't as high intensity as other Iron Jaws lists, it's waiting for that perfect time to pull the trigger where it just blows its load all over you. Which is what Iron Jaws is good at doing that. Yes, also another techie thing about the list is he's running, instead of putting Destroyer on the Mega Boss on Maw-Crusher, he's doing it on the Foot Boss, which actually makes the Foot Boss a threat on its own. Because I feel like when you have pigs and a Maw-Crusher charging at you, you don't really think about the Auric Mega Boss, but I feel like the Auric Mega Boss is there to be a mid and late game threat where he's just sitting on an objective and he's just gonna clobber whoever's on it with 6 damage or 5 damage a swing.
Yeah, plus he's also, I mean, I play Big Wall a lot and I use a lot of those guys. The other thing they're really good at is when you're playing an aggressive army and the opponent is also playing aggressive army, you can block off movement lanes with that Mega Boss, and he fights on death. So if they come in and they're trying to be aggressive, you can lock down their ability to really be that aggressive. Because if they go into him, he's still going to fight them, and then they're in a bad position. So he's really useful in ways. And the Fungoid is also like that neat little tech thing where he's just adding these utility that some lists lack. And I think, it's just really well done, really well made list for the good player.
Yeah. And I mean, also, another thing about the Mega Boss on foot is that he can fight on death, so no matter what, he is always up trading, no matter whatever he goes into.
Always trading. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's so cheap. 140 points for that model. It's amazing.
Yeah. Really,
That's
really
part
good
thing too, is that if he kills a chaff unit, he just gets stronger, more attacks, and then more wounds. So if you literally just leave him alone, he'll just become this little boss into a big boy later on. So yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten him up to 11 wounds, and 8. I got him to 12 attacks, 11 wounds one time, and that was just geez.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, sweet. All right. Well, if there's nothing else to say about this list, good luck to you, Greg. I'm sure, you always usually get 4 1s, and I know you'll get a 5-0 one day, assuming you don't pair into me. So I wouldn't really call this a number 2. I feel like so when I say number 2 list, I feel like any of my top 3 lists can go 5-0 or do really well.
Yeah.
My quote unquote number 2, no particular order, is actually my fellow co-host Aaron Newbaum. And I feel like because you're the one that piloting this list, even though I could explain it, but I feel like you can explain it better than me. And then I could talk about the intricacies and how it'll do against other matchups. But yeah, go ahead and explain it.
So I mean, first things first. Obviously, the balance patch came out, and Cruel Boys got a huge bump. So this list went down 125 points and gained 2 spellcasts, and that's a really big power bump. Grin and Blades also got buffed at the GHB when that came out, so it's gotten a lot more powerful than it would have been previously. And I have been playing with a very similar list to this. At the Games Workshop Open, I went 3-2, but almost my 2 losses were very, very close. And this list is just massively more powerful than that. So basically, it's got a unit of 30 Gut Rippas, which went down by 60 points, and they just do so much damage. 30 Gut Rippas kills damn near anything it touches. They're not as tanky as some other units because they're only a 5-up save and stuff like that. But if you know how to use them right, they're just basically delete this and then also have a lot of wounds. So it's pretty scary with that. Then it's also got another unit of 10 Gut Rippas and then a unit of Hobgrots. And those are kind of just little units to do some utility stuff. And then there's 2 units of Bolt Boys. There's 2 Swamp Color Shamans, which can now cast and put elixirs on people. So I'm getting the 5-up or poison or +1 save or whatever, and then also casting a spell, which is important. Then I have the gecko, as I like to call him, the Snatchaboss, and he's got Arcane Tome and Miasma, and that's a third spellcast that I have and a third dispel I have. And then I also have the Boss, who is not the general, I think, in this list. I was switching back and forth between them, but I think he's not the general in this list. But I've talked about it before several times. He's really, really useful. He allows me like double Overwatch. He's really powerful, or Unleash Hell, sorry. Double Unleash Hell is really powerful. He just gets around the table. He deals with small units. He's just a problem in everyone's side. He has really good threat projection. And then the last thing is Ravnak's Gnashing Jaws. That spell, frankly, is just broken. It's just, at 50 points, it's fucking nuts. It's absurdly powerful. And now that I have these extra spell casts, if I'm not close to anybody, I'm not going to be casting like Nasty Hex or whatever with my Swamp Colors. And really, Mystic Shield and stuff like that isn't super great on Cruel Boys. So I can just sort of launch that Jaws out there, and then I'm doing Mortal Wounds with my whole army, plus Ravnak's Gnashing Jaws doing Mortal Wounds. And it's just so much damage output that it's going to be really like devastating. If I roll high on that thing and just delete a unit instantly, it's pretty brutal. So the list has crazy damage output, pretty high wound count. It's a 2-drop, so I get to really control drops and stuff like that. And it's got a lot of dirty, nasty tricks it can do that'll catch people by surprise.
I mean, that definitely sounds like, dope. And with the massive like points decreases, it actually feels like you got a lot more units in your army, which is really nice because I feel like outside of your tricks going off on a 4-up, the fact that you didn't have enough bodies for your hammers was definitely an issue. But now you definitely have enough. So I guess with a 30 block, are you afraid of bounty hunters touching that, or do you feel like you have too many wounds, like 60 wounds, to deal with that? They most likely won't go down.
60 wounds is a lot of wounds. And yeah, it's only 5-up save, but I can't put the elixir for +1 save. I can't cast Mystic Shield for +1 save. They can give you -1 to hit. And then if I choose the Noisy Racket, you're -1 to wound on the first battle round. So it's like Bounty Hunters is really good against it, of course, but I don't think it's as good against it as people think it is. Because they're, if I'm at basically a 4+ save ignoring Rend 1 with 60 wounds and you're -1 to hit, -1 to wound, you're really not clearing that, at least not the first turn. And they will kill you on the backswing most of the time in this list.
I think Cruel Boys, I don't know if it's one of the heroes or anything, but if they're by one of the heroes, aren't they also Battle Shock immune too?
It's not exactly. Only one model runs away, but basically, yeah. So I don't have to think my TP for that if they're next to the Vulture Boss, and his base is real big, so it's really easy to do that.
Okay, then that's really good then, because so they won't all run, even if you don't have the CP. Yeah, I mean that's spicy.
So I can spend it on all defense, or I can do whatever I need to do with that CP, and so I'm not as choked on that. And yeah, like you were saying, the points decreases made it so you actually have enough bodies to not just get tabled all the time. With Cruel Boys, which is always a problem. It's like, damn, if I just had like one more unit on the table, I could win this game, but I don't, so I can't. And that changed with these massive point decreases. So I think this list is going to do pretty damn well. It is Cruel Boys, so it is. If I make a mistake, I can just lose immediately. But if I play well, I think I can do pretty well.
Another reason why I really like this list, and this made my top 3, was solely because of the reason that people are taking a lot of shooting in this event, especially Ogre players with the Iron Blasters. And the thing is that Cruel Boys is great for anti-tech shooting because specifically you're running Gritting Blades, which is you cannot be targeted by shooting and also spells, right? Outside of 12.
From outside 12 inches, yeah.
Yeah, so then the so then if you go against Iron Blasters, they have to get close within 12, and then by that point, before they can even get there, you're just going to shoot them off. So you have great anti-shooting. And also you don't have to with this list too, but you can also do the dirty trick where you can make the Bolt Boys hidden, and they can't be shot at all, even if they get within 12 inches.
Exactly. So if I fight a shooting army, I can just basically make them not play for at least a turn or two, and then from then on still control what they can shoot. And that's really powerful. I mean, let's say the Gossamids, right? They want to shoot my Bolt Boys. And I'm just like, nah, you're not going to do that. You're going to shoot Gut Rippers, and that's not going to do much. The Idneth lists, for example, there's a good number of Idneth lists. The Iron Blasters, there's a lot of shooting here. There's several Lumineth lists. and Lumeth no longer ignore that rule, which is
Yeah,
you know,
that's a giant buff for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
this
very
list.
helpful.
I was shooting would be everywhere, and I was right, and I definitely am glad that I played this because I was gonna play a big Yellers list for a little bit. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna go with the Grinning Blades, and I'm glad I did. So
Yeah, I think Grinning Blades is definitely what gives you the edge over a lot of lists, especially the shooting and the ogre list, because I feel like with how hard the Iron Blasters hit now, so Iron Blasters got buffed from being D6 damage to being D3 plus 3. So at minimum, they will do 4 damage, and they have 2 shots each on the long shots. If they get in close, they have 10 shots, 3s and 3s, and because Underguts buffs the rend, -2, 2 damage each, which is devastating to a lot of armies. Like, they might have overtuned that War Scroll, or that needs to get a points increase, but because you're gritting blades and you can do your trick on a 4-up, I don't think you'll be worried about the Iron Blasters, and you could counter shoot them, which is
yeah,
the counters to those ogre lists, and we'll go over one or two of those ogre lists later, so people know what we're talking about. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you for your vote of confidence. I also really like my list. Sometimes I'm a little bit shaky on my list. This one I'm very confident in, so it's good to hear some validation that someone else agrees.
yeah. I mean, I'm sad that we didn't get a rematch at SoCal Open, but
Yeah,
someday we will. And yeah, I think this list will have what it takes to become the master of the hoedown.
yeah. If I do go 5-0, I'll be the first person to ever go 5-0 with Cruel Boys. So that is my fingers crossed. If I get a little bit of luck, but if I can do it,
Oh,
try my best for sure.
all
You got
right,
to
I
rig those
believe in you.
pairings, Matt. Rig the pairings, buddy.
Just put them all against the ogre players the entire weekend.
All right, so now it's time for number one lists. And like you were saying, these top 3 lists, they're all very good. So it's kind of hard to pick 1, 2, 3. But I had to pick something for first. And actually, this one I'm actually pretty confident is, in my opinion, in the hands of this player in particular, and this list, and the way it turned out in this meta here, is actually Shane Lambert's Zinch army. Shane's been playing Zinch forever. He's the number 2 ranked Zinch player, I believe, on ITC. And this list, it's really interesting. So we were talking a lot when we were at SoCal Open about some of this, but it's got 18 screamers. That's a lot of screamers. And screamers got way more powerful in this new book, like way more. They used to be kind of, they're like utility pieces. Now they actually do a huge amount of mortal wounds. They're really fast. They hit pretty hard, and they're so basically these guys can fly over, and they're just gonna like be deleting stuff with like 18 of them is a lot. They're 3 wounds apiece, so they're pretty tanky. And then you can do stuff like fold reality and bring a bunch of them back. So it's really hard to deal with those. He also has like other units, like various screening units and objective holding units. He's got the Kairos. He's got like a lot of powerful stuff going on here and various spells. And there's a lot of like minutia. But I think one of the things that makes this list really good is in this meta is he does have a lot longer range threat projection than you normally would see in Siege. Because the screamers are so fast, they can get to things. Like normally against a shooting army, Zinch is like kind of doesn't really want to fight a shooting army, and this list I think does. This list is totally fine fighting a shooting army because you're just gonna be like, all right, well I can move like 14 inches, I think it is, something like that for screamers.
16. Yeah, it's crazy. 16.
16 inches with 18 screamers and just delete, fly over some stuff, kill a bunch of stuff, then charge some other stuff and kill a bunch of other stuff, and then you're just like in a bad spot. Meanwhile, he's casting spells, summoning stuff, and just being a general pain in the ass. The other thing is like a lot of the lists that aren't shooting are like a little bit slower and trendlier, and I think Zinch is just good against that all the time. So and this also has the damage output to be able to kill Gargants and stuff like that, which there are a number of Gargant players at this event. Zinch sometimes struggles to kill Gargant players. I think this list can. I mean, it's not going to be easy still, but the screamers can help a lot with that as well. So I think it's well positioned, good player, really interesting list, very techy, and it has a lot of damage output. So I think all those things combined, I think he's very likely to go 5-0 or at least 4-1 in my opinion, in this event.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
mean,
agree.
mhm.
Yeah. It's like you said, Shane's a really good player. He's been playing it for forever. He knows everything about the book. Um, actually the clutch thing though is that Ogroids, and that Ogroid Thaumaturge just slaps hard when he finally
Yeah.
gets into combat. So it's actually quite a change when you consider, you think about Tzeentch, you think of spell, mortal wound, and range damage. But once that Thaumaturge gets into combat, he's crushing things. So.
He slaps. He's a little fucking cannon. You just launch that boy in, and he gets people. He gets them good.
Yeah,
Dirty touch.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely vouch for that because when I was playing a practice game against Shane, he arcane suggestion my 60 blob of Zongors in BOC, so I can't rally or inspiring presence them with arcane suggestion. He charged the Ogroid in at the side where all the Zongors couldn't kill him, and then he fought twice and he proceeded to do 30 damage alone with him, and he made them all run. So yeah,
It's disgusting. Oh my god.
So I mean,
Yeah.
not only so even though people are kind of sad that like Tzeentch doesn't have all their damage in their hero phase, they spread out the damage in the new book so much that they can play in every phase, which is really nice. And with I think you might have went over this, Aaron, but with how screamers work, they do mortal wounds when they move over you, retreat over you, charge over you, and maybe even pile in. So they actually do a shit ton of mortals, and they made them hit a lot harder too, which is another strength in the list.
If they can pass over you and then charge, they like when they charge, they go boop, boop, and they like have enough movement to just tap over your base. It's so many mortal wounds, and then they're pretty fighty, and like you said, the army's better at combat now. They're tankier, and the other thing that makes this list really really hard to deal with is he's got these 18 screamers being super obnoxious, and then if you do get through them, get past them, he's then got 10 pinks, and no one wants that. Like no one wants to fight that after you've already you've been taking damage all game. These screamers have been annoying you all game, and then trying to like halfway through the game finally engage with the pinks. You're not going to get them off in time, and so like, and then he's at that point he's summoning blues in places and stuff like that. And it's just like really really hard to actually get a leg up on this list. It could potentially get hurt pretty bad by an alpha strike, but if your position's poorly and doesn't deploy well. But like other than that, this list seems really hard to beat.
Yeah, and then also he could fold reality on the screamers. So even if you kill some of them, as long as he doesn't roll a 1, which will auto slay the unit, he'll keep bringing back screamers and just tying you down. And then I also want to shout out the demonic simulacrum, because that thing is so goddamn annoying. Because also turn 1 with how Arcane Armies works is that it cannot be unbound or even eaten by an incarnate turn or battle round 1. So they'll just do there and just pick off your heroes or other stuff, just doing a bunch of mortal wounds while everything else in the army just does mortals. So yeah, it's spicy.
Yeah. I think more so than picking things off, it's a great move blocker for those alpha armies. It just, you put it right there in the center of the board and they can't move around.
Yeah, and also his grand strategy, Master of Destiny, is so like easy to get. Just at least have some fate dice. So
like, oh no, like a couple dice. It's so stupid.
Yeah, and also because he has Kairos in the list, he gets a free fate dice every turn, and then he can cast a spell to get more fate dice. And then with I think Pinks also give a fate dice if he rolls like a 5-up or something. So most of the time he will get that grand strat. So
I can't remember. Does Kairos know all the spells in Tzeentch now or something? I can't remember.
Yes, it's a map buff.
So you're the Shield of Fate on the Pinks, and that's 5-up ward on Pinks. That's not fun, Like anything is more. And you're like, okay, well, 50 wounds with a 5-up ward save is not what I was trying to fight today.
And -1 a hit.
Yep.
In melee.
Yeah. That's the kicker.
Yeah. Anything else to go over in this list you want to say, Aaron?
Mostly covers it, yeah.
All right, sounds good. So, Gabe, what is your number 2?
Number 1.
So,
Number
one. So, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of interchangeable. And this one's really more about the player versus the list. So I chose Ian McLeese. He has been running literally the same list for about 4 or 5 months now. And with the brand new tome, it has just incrementally gotten stronger. He did go 13th place at both the Summer Smash Old Town along with the GW San Diego GT with this list. So like I mentioned, it's really more that he's such a great player and really knows the units so in depth that with the brand new book and those units getting stronger, it just propels him to that podium.
Yeah, he got that nitrous oxide boost right into his list he was already piloting. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So he's got the three squads of the Iron Blasters, which are just insane now. They win up about 40 points, but they're on Ren 3 in this sub faction in the Underguts. So, it's just doing a ton of damage from range. He's got the Noblars who aren't running away. They're the perfect shaft units. And then if something actually does get through the Noblars, though, that big block of Iron Guts just steamrolls anything that it touches. So it's a really good list piloted by a really good person. So I'm looking forward to him getting at least a 4-1, if not a 5-0, at this tournament.
Yeah, and then I think for me, this is also one of my top picks, but Gabe stole it from me.
Yeah,
So
dude.
yeah, I mean to talk more about the list because I played against the old version and the new version a couple of times. So for those that don't really know the Ogre book, the new one too well, to go over the intricacies, so his Frost Lord on Stonehorn has the mount trait Rock Main Elder, which makes him -1 to hit, not only in melee, but also in shooting. And with a 5 of ward, that thing is pretty tough to kill. So they've actually buffed like Stonehorns with the new mount traits, even though there's only like 3 or 4 mount traits now. And then the Butcher is the general with Reluctant Rabble Rouser and makes all of the Noblars wholly with an 18 Battle Shock immune. And then he has the artifact Gruesome Trophy Racks, which gives the Iron Blasters +1 to hit, wholly within I think either 12 or 18. But essentially they get +1 to hit against heroes and monsters. So when he was playing against me in our practice game, he literally so it's 2 shots. It's gonna be 2 shots instead of 4s and 2s. It's gonna be 3s and 2s. Ren 3, D3 plus 3 damage. So that will kill most things across the board. Because I remember I was watching a test game between 2 of our locals, Shane and Sam, and the Kairos just got shut off turn 1 by the Iron Blasters. So they're extremely scary now, and I think Iron Blasters with how they are will definitely shake up the local small town throwdown meta, which is why we were talking so much about other lists like Aaron and others that could potentially counter it. Because to counter a list like this, you either need a lot of wounds where you don't care, or you need counter shooting that can't be shot at too. In addition,
something I would like to just mention, just to like reiterate something, is like we said, he's been playing this for a while. He's been doing pretty well when it was honestly a little bit underpowered. He's been like losing games by like small amounts and then winning all his games he's winning by a lot, kind of crushing people and just placing pretty highly with a much weaker version of this. And now a lot of people are bandwagoning onto basically a very similar list to this, give or take a few things. But he's got the reps, he got the experience, he knows the shortcomings of these models, he knows how to position them just right. He's made all the mistakes to learn the little things that cost you or win you games. So I think he's definitely positioned to do the best out of all the people playing this type of list at the event, which I think there's 3 or 4
there's
people.
3 or 4. I think Ogres have the most players right now out of all the factions. And then also what I really dig about, he's done really well with this. He's gotten like a 4-1 with it at the Summer Smash event for Ultimate Throwdown that had like 80 people. And then at SoCal Open, he beat 2 Seraphon lists in a row. And he also played Seraphon a couple times at Old Town Throwdown. And he has I think he's like a 4-0 or 5-0 record against Seraphon. And they're all running like Gavin's list or the Teleport Skinks one, which is really impressive because it's hard for a lot of factions to beat Seraphon.
Yeah. And he kicked my ass with it one time for sure. He whipped me off the table. I was like, didn't expect it. So yeah, he's a very good player.
But yeah, to keep going on about the list, because I feel like talking about new ogres is important for the event, and also important for people to understand what they do because they're premiering for the first time at this event. So Blubbergub's Stench, which is a spell that the Butcher has, it makes all the Iron Blasters just like wholly within a certain range. It turns them into count as monsters, so they'll count as 10 on objectives. They get to do monstrous actions, and they get to do impact hits on a 4-up, depending on how well they charge. So the Iron Blaster, aside from being good at shooting, they're actually like good at charging too, and in combat. So they're a very like multi, role unit, which is really like,
Yeah. That changes the way the list functions a lot. A counterpunch. If you like clear his Noblars, he's like, all right, well, here's a bunch of charging monsters. You're like, ooh.
Yep.
Yeah, because essentially what this list does is that it doesn't just sit back and shoot you. It grinds forward and like shoots you, forces you to come to them, and then it meets you at the middle because it's like shooting and a fighting army. So it wants to do both. Which is very similar to your big WoW list that you play. You make them come to you, and then you want to fight. It's not like you just want to sit there and castle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's actually got a similar game. I you mentioned it does have kind of a similar gameplay style as that. That's a pretty good observation right there.
Yeah, I mean his list has a lot of trading pieces too. Like the Stone Horn, it can be independent on its own. The Lead Belchers also, which are just got 4 units with cannons, they're even though they're hitting on 4s and 3s, like it's either I think it's D6 shots, which unit can be really swingy, but they're Ren 2, so it's reliable like plank damage, and they can also fight in melee too. Iron Guts with Bounty Hunters. When I played against them, they cleared 60 Zongors on their own because they're doing 4 damage a swing.
Don't they get to fight twice or something like that? Like
once per game.
Yeah. So
the way he sets it up is that he hides them behind his screen of like 40 or 60 Noblars is how many ever he has, and he positions it in a way where if you engage the Noblars, you will always drag the Iron Guts in no matter what. Which is makes them really nice, which is like the problem that I had against me. And then also Iron Guts, they get to ignore a spell on a 5 or a 6 up. So it actually makes them quite durable. And then to go on to the Noblars, which is, in my opinion, one of the crucial things in the list, he has 60 wounds for 300 points. And they're not battle line, so Bounty Hunters will do nothing to them.
Yep.
It's hard to clear that, man. It's just a lot of wounds, a lot of bodies, holds objectives, gets in the way. They're battle shock immune when he's in that area, like hard to deal with.
Yeah, that's really the key is, they're battle shock immune. So you go in there, you take off 10, 15 of them, well, they're still sticking around. So you got to fight them once again in the next turn.
Yeah, it's really spicy, and even when you do clear them all up, the hammers are just going to smack into you.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so our last number 1 list, Matt, what you got picked?
I was thinking about this for some particular time because I almost wanted to pick ogres again, but I feel like for the interest of the stream, I feel like, after looking at Ian's list, because he is the OG, all the ogre lists kind of like look more the same. So I will not be picking ogres. I will be picking a Cities of Sigmar list, and I can never say his last name, so I'm not going to try to like butcher it on stream. But it's also, before I go on, someone was saying that we only review Sakal United list. That's not true because Ian McLeese is a part of War Room Gladiators, which is another like local SoCal team, and it's the same team.
Let's go War Room Gladiators.
Yeah, they're one of our OG SoCal teams. They were here long before SoCal United. So,
many years.
I mean, they're like the OG like rating champions before SoCal United came. But so then let me find Jarrett's list. Yep, he is a local that is from one of our like local teams around here that's been around for a while. He's been playing since 1.0, and he's playing Cities of Sigmar Hallowheart. And there's going to be a couple reasons about why I really like this list. So then, Cities of Sigmar Hallowheart, essentially their gimmick, because in Cities of Sigmar, each sub-faction is like their own army, so you could play this army in like a billion different ways. Yeah, so then, also, as someone said on stream, War Room Gladiators did come from Vegas, but they have a huge, like, SoCal presence where, I consider them a local team anyway. Anyways,
one of the local owners, Ray, he was from Southern California first, part of an old wargaming group called The Chosen with Ian and myself, and then he moved and helped open up a store out in Vegas called War Room, and they that's where they really officially created that team.
Okay, so see, they are a SoCal team.
Yeah.
Got them. Anyways, okay, so yeah, City's Sigmar, so that Halhart, they know a bunch of spells, and the thing with this list, I think one of the reasons why it made my top picks, because it's actually really unconventional. It could be an anti-meta list for all the lists that are coming into Noogvember, and I'll slowly go over why. So he's going no place for the week, which is, kill all the enemy battle line, which is not hard to do. And then he's running a Celestial Huracanum with a Celestial Battle Mage as his general, and he has Veteran of the Blazing Crusades. So from what I understand, he has extra wounds on that guy, and then he has the artifact White Tome Fire, which is he knows all the spell wars. And then with how Cities of, or not Cities of Sigmar, Hallowheart works, each wizard gets to cast an additional spell, so they could generate a lot. They could generate a lot of spells. And then the thing about the Celestial Huracanum is that within 24 inches, or no, not within 24, 18 inches, they can get 3 shots, and on 2-up, they'll do D3 mortal wounds, which is a lot of mortal wounds to do, and it's on 2-up D3. So reliably, you'll do about like 6 or even 9 mortal wounds if you roll hot. And then he's running a Battle Mage with an Arcane Tome with Roaming Wildfire, which is another spell. And then he's also running the spell Warding Brand. This spell will come up later as to why I'm bringing this up. But essentially what Warding Brand does is that if you put it on a unit, every time they take melee damage on a 4-up, they do mortal wounds bounce back at you. So usually other Hallowheart lists piloted by, for example, Tom Guan will put this on an Incarnate or like Dragons, and they'll just keep bouncing mortal wounds off at you. So it's a trading piece. And then to go on with the rest of the list, he's running a Battle Mage, a second Battle Mage with Seer Wounds, which is heals D6 and Roaming Wildfire. And then essentially what Hallowheart gets to do is that they can damage one of their casters for either D3 or D6 to give the rest of their casters around them that like much bonus to cast, depending on how many mortal wounds that you take. But because they have so many bonuses to cast too, after you do mortal wounds to yourself, that's why one of the battle mages will cast Seer Wounds to heal that guy that keeps sacrificing himself to give everybody, bonuses to cast. So most of the time they won't like die, unless something bad happens with the dice roll.
Bad for them, yeah.
Yeah, it's spicy. And then the thing, this is a curveball, which I really like, is Gotrek Gerson. I really like Gotrek in this list because, even though he's really slow, which is kind of one of his like issues, and that, I feel like really strong players can play around him. However, like the Incarnate, he's something you like have to deal with, and he can just sit on an objective by himself and just solo things because he can fight twice. He does mortal wounds on hit rolls of 6s. He gets to reroll all hits and wounds, and he's a 3-up ward with about 7 or 8 wounds. And then essentially what this list can do is they can put Warding Brand on him, so he's always if he takes damage, he's just bouncing off onto you on a 4-up. They could give him +1 to wound with one of his spells, so he could just be buffed to ever living like hell with this. And because he's a 3-up ward, he won't die to iron blasting shooting or any kinds of shooting. He can just sit there and just like laugh at you. And because of how things are worded, he can heroic action heal himself, and because he's counted as a troop unit, he can actually be put in bounty hunters. So he'll be doing 4 damage a swing, against most targets, which is like nutty. So that's something for like everyone coming to the tournament to watch out for. So unless you're Cruel Boys, you can just shut off his like ward spell.
Yeah,
I think he'll give lists a lot of problems.
I think a lot of lists are gonna. My list does have the tools to deal with it, but a lot of lists are gonna really struggle against Gotrek. Honestly, I think he's kind of in a good spot right now. Honestly, like in the meta in general, I think he should be seen a little bit more often.
Yeah, and like he was so meta dominant before earlier in this GHP, but now people dropped him because I think people played around him. But because he is the only Gotrek player, that's why I feel like this list is like a really good like dark horse, because it's not what somebody will what most people are expecting, and it will definitely like throw people's game plan off, which is really good. And then he has 50 crossbows, and 50 crossbows is really gross because, well, he's actually not running the free guild general, so they won't be 3s and 2s. They'll be 4s and 3s, but that's still a lot of shots, which is really good into units like Iron Blasters. So he's looking to play the shoot you with mortal wounds from afar and shoot you with in the shooting phase, while he has his Gotrek play up. And aside of Gotrek, he has 2 units of Fulminators, which can also be buffed with Warding Brand and +1 to wound. So yeah, this list has a lot of trading and counterpunch. And then he's also running Quicksilver Swords, which is really good against mortal wounds because he can just ignores mortal wounds, ignores ward saves, and does a good amount of mortal wounds. So this list has go on.
I was thinking, it does like decent steady damage and ignores wards.
Yeah, and it can play for damage in every single phase: hero phase, shooting phase, and combat.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest strength with this list is he's just throwing bricks of dice at you, no matter what it is. Like you were saying, he's playing in every single phase, so he's throwing lots of dice at you in the hero phase, in the shooting phase. That 30 block of free guild crossbowmen are doing 60 shots at 24-inch range. So that's 2 bricks of dice right there, plus the 2 10-man squads. When he wants to engage you, he will engage you with Gotrek, who's more than likely not going to die. You got to send a lot of damage into Gotrek in order to actually kill him. And then he's got the 2 squads of Fulminators, kind of like flanking units that just go in and piecemeal things when he's trying to surgically cut something open. So
I also, this is one of my kind of lists. When I was trying to pick my top 3, it was in there. And one of the things that I like about it, so when I'm designing lists and assessing lists, I like to kind of imagine how it actually positions itself on a tabletop. And one thing I like about this list is it's got the 3 durable, high damage, but not incredibly high damage, except for Gotrek threats that you can basically put out. And there's let's say there's 3 objectives, or there's front and 2 flanks. So you can obviously a scary melee threat on each side. He's got several screening units, and then he's got those 2 bricks of shooting units. So basically, no matter where you position on the table, he's going to be able to engage with you pretty heavily. And that kind of counteracts the downside of Gotrek, where his army is really good at engaging wherever it needs to. So Gotrek not being that good at that is less of a downside because his army's so good. It's like a counterweight. So he's giving himself a lot more melee damage, a lot more durability, and the downside is very much mitigated by how the list actually functions. So I really like that about this list as well. Yeah,
and also I will say the one weakness with this list is that it still has to walk at you, but because it can, it can be a moving castle, it's still strength, and also Fulminators and Gotrek can be given +2 to charge by the Battle Mage from Gur.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree though. The weaknesses for sure. There's two weaknesses. One, crossbows are very fragile. Someone can touch them, they're gone. And then secondly, he has to walk. That's
also if you're able to get on top of his heroes, you also neuter the list incredibly. So.
Yeah, that too. If he messes up deployment and stuff like that, he can lose very quickly on the spot. But he's a pretty good. I haven't played against him in a while. Honestly, it's been like a year and a half since I actually played against him. But when I did play against him, he was pretty good. So yeah. So I think if there's nothing else to say, that's all of our top 3 lists. And I feel like all of these lists we can all see them being in the top 5 or top 10, which is why we brought them all up and we want to share it with everybody. But to not end the stream off on that, is there any list that you guys want to shout out for being it doesn't have to be the strongest, but it could be funny, it could be something that you find amusing, or something really techy and tricky. So I got a couple for sure. For one, Trish's list I think is actually really scary. Trish is always plays Sinesh and has played it when it was the weakest thing ever, and always, but very recently came super close to winning a quite competitive RTT locally with Sinesh, and this list looks even scarier than before. So I like that list. It's a little bit hard to assess and whether it's gonna 5 or whatever, but I think it's a cool list and I think it's fun. It's got a lot of bliss barbs. It's got a pretty darn good counterpunch here. The damage output is higher than it looks like it is with this list. I think it's one of the things that you look at it, you're like, okay, that's pretty good, but the damage output's there, and Glutos went down in points. I think it's Glutos if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
Glutos went down in points substantially, and after the other points drops, the list just basically fits a lot more models into it than did before. So I think this list is pretty scary. And Glutos kind of performs in a similar way to how the Kron Spine performs. but it's actually a unit in the army, so it gets all the buffs and stuff like that, and it's just a great utility piece, super durable, medium damage output, but like it definitely is really valuable in the army. So I think this list is pretty cool. I think it's pretty powerful. I expect at least a solid result out of it. And she's really been like getting better and better and better very rapidly as a player. So I'm really excited to see how she does.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And the tech with this list too is that she's running Blue Scribes, who knows all the lore of bait, so she can make a unit, not take, be able to take any command abilities or be issued or received, and also she can make a unit -1 to save, which really helps the Bliss Barb. So Bliss Barbs will be -2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so out of the list
Yeah,
of
that cheesy Blue Scribes.
Yeah,
Blue Scribe is
also,
like a really interesting piece, right? So I was like, I didn't know why it was in the list until you just put it right there, because I didn't realize that that's the combo right there. I was like rerolling spells for cogs, and I was like, oh, this makes sense actually.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's cool.
and then it's going to go off on a 2-up, so it's pretty reliable.
Yeah, anything that can bring in a Blue Scribes is probably gonna do its best to fit a Blue Scribes into its list just for Arcane Suggestion. And I mean, it as well is on the disc, so I think it's moving about 16 inches. So it's got late game movement shenanigans built into it as well. So the other piece really is, since she is Lord Hayes, she can bring in Sigvald from any board edge that she really wants to, which is really cool. He does get, I think it's a +3 to his charge, somewhere around there. And the dice roll is how many attacks he gets. So he, along with ignoring your ward saves, if I remember correctly, he's just a pretty big melee monster and just eats things as best as he can.
Plus, there's cool stuff like outflanking with the Bliss Barb archers and Sigvalds. You're like, all right, I'm just gonna you position bad, outflank with Bliss Barbs, and just shoot off this thing you want to protect with 40 shots, 3s and 3s, like Ren 1 damage. It's like that's pretty scary. And then the other thing I want to point out is the 2 Exalted Chariots and Bounty Hunters. Exalted Chariots have a lot of attacks. Like a lot of attacks. The problem was always they were just damage ones. They just didn't have quite enough damage to clear things out. But when you do stuff like charge between 2 units and then with your ability, and you end up getting like +4, +5 attacks, and then they're like 11 attacks with some things, and like they have like 18 attacks sometimes, and damage 2. It's just a lot of damage output out like very suddenly, and it can clear out all those valuable units like that, and then she can get into juicy stuff and they're not that many points, so it's like it's a really nice the bounty hunters is very well utilized there, basically, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like, don't they also do a lot of mortal wounds when they like charge, and then they also do mortal wounds at the start of combat? Like they actually do a lot.
They do like, yeah, they're pretty good. They were just like not quite good enough until without the bounty hunters, and the bounty hunters pumped them up huge. Kind of like how Black Knights, they don't look that good on paper, but with the bounty hunters, they suddenly are like really scary for your units. Similar sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid. And, I feel like, as Trish has, like, been getting better, I can see her doing really well with this list. And I also want to shout her out, too, because, again, as I shouted out at the beginning of the stream, she was the one that has created our Old Town Throwdown and our Small Town Throwdown logos. And our, award-winning prize, which it seems like Aaron's gunning to win, to add to the collection, to the belt and the hat.
Add to the combo, dude. Got to flex on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
You
be
just
wearing
need
the
some
belt.
signal chaps, and
I'm 100%.
it'll be
belt, and
What'd you say, Aaron? You cut off.
I'm 100% bringing that belt, and I'm going to be wearing it the whole tournament.
People better. You better. The champ's gotta show up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, what about you? Got any like shout out lists you want to throw out there?
I actually, I'm an Archeon fanboy, so I'm gonna pick out Patrick's list. He's riding the S2D to the wind, into the next book, which is great. So sort of, a little bit of a cookie cutter list when it comes to Archeon 2nd edition Slaves book, but what I really like about it is that he adds in the Mind Stealer's Sphinx. So it gets him that ability to play the activation game by making a unit fight last. So he's got normal Archeon, which is great. When you put him in with the mark of Zinch, he basically becomes a -1 to save. Or well, it's on the opposite end. So he goes from 3-up normal save to almost a -1 with all of the additional modifiers, re-rolling ones. So he becomes a tanky monster. Yeah, with a 4-up spell ignore along with the mortal wound save in the old book that does damage back to you. So it's pretty nasty. Also, Chaos Lord running around, Archeon and his two amigos, the Chaos Lord and the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, lets Archeon fight twice, and the Sorcerer Lord just gives him the buff to +1 to hit and +1 to wound, which is really good, making the majority of his attacks 2s and 2s, except for I think it's the tail attacks, which would go down to 3s and 2s. But for the most part, it makes a monster. And then he's got he's got 2 squads of Iron Golems to sit on objectives. They get +1 to save in the old book when they stand still. Once again, re-rolling ones on their saves because they're because they're Zinch. And he's got a squad of Untamed Beasts for the pre-game move. And then 2 squads of the Encircled Weapon Varen Guards, which I don't think we really touched on it on the first list I talked about, Ben's. But the Encircled Weapons do mortal wounds, I believe. Oh, no, the Encircled Weapons are 6 attacks, sorry. Yeah, it's been a while. So, massive amounts of attacks, and they also get to fight twice, which is really awesome. So that's my cheeky list for the tournament. I really love it. Like I said, I'm an Archeon fanboy and currently starting to paint up Archeon number 2 for somebody. So it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, new Archeon War Scroll, he looks like he's just gonna be a beast. And also he can be -1 to wound marker Nurgle, so we'll see how that shakes up our SoCal local meta. So excited to see the new book.
That book, I'm scared of it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be the book that all the SCD players were wanting for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so amazing. I'm super excited. I got it all in my car. I can't wait to go to Geeky tomorrow and test it against somebody. So
hell yeah,
it'll be fun.
Then I guess lastly, Matt, you got any shout out lists you wanna put forward?
So, I actually have several shout out lists, and I think I'm gonna start off with, actually another STD list, and I think I want to bring this up because it's definitely something, unconventional. Let's see if it actually works. Benjamin Hosking. So he was so he was actually the Geeky Tees player I was talking about earlier when I was talking about Ben, but then I confused him with another Ben, but they're both Bens that happen to play Slaves of Darkness. But anyways, Benjamin Hosking has, he played at his very first, so he has actually come from Warhammer Fantasy. So he's played against Tom Guan and the LA crew a lot back during Fantasy's day. And he's just got recently back into Warhammer, with Age Sigmar. And at his very first GT with this list, he went 4-1. And I really dig it, and I wanted to shout it out because not only is he the list is really cool, he's a player that could do really well. So he is running Slaves of Darkness Ravagers, which is, I have never seen anyone take this at an event ever. So, let's start off by looking at it. So essentially Ravagers, he could summon Marauders, right? Or Cultists at the end of every turn. And then they all have the auto charge rule. They change the lowest dice to the highest dice. So he can just tie you down with a lot of chaff. And then with how Ravagers works, all of them get to have command traits, which is like techie with the list. And with the Gaunt Summoner on Disc of Zinch, because he's running the updated War Scroll from Zinch, he can bring a bunch of Chaos Warriors or any Zinch marked units from Deep Strike and just shove them in your face outside of 9. And then he's running Sorcerer Lord, Mask of Darkness for the teleport, and then Sorcerer Lord on Manticore. It's been a while since I played the S2D book, so I don't remember what all these command traits do. But it's an awesome list, and he's running the Karkadrak. And the Karkadrak in his list, from when I watched one of his games, actually runs Lotch on the Soul Seeker, so he can teleport on the Karkadrak into your lines. He can move with it, and then he'll just kill whatever support piece or whatever chaff unit it gets his hands on. So there's actually a lot of thinking and tech with this list, which is why I really wanted to shout it out for the stream. Even though we went over another Sleeves of Darkness list before, but this is important for the stream, and this list was I think 6th or 5th place at SoCal Open. Then he is running, 9 Beasts, 40 Chaos Warriors. This isn't even the new Chaos Warriors. This is the current Chaos Warriors scroll, which is not as great, but they still get +1 to save, so they're going from a 4-up save to a 3-up save, and then they have a spell ignore, and then what does his Ancient Mark give them again?
Rerolling saves of 1.
Yeah, so they're actually stupidly tanky, and people are going to think, oh, what about bounty hunters? Well, I've talked about the list, and he does not care about bounty hunters. So, this is definitely
the wounds. It's not just wound count. He's got it's the saves. Most bounty hunter units are not really designed to break armor. Because that's not what bounty hunter stuff is. So I think that's why he doesn't care as much. Because it's they clear chaff, but it's not chaff. It's 3 or 2-up saves. 3-up saves, I think. Yeah, and then rerolling ones and ignore. So it's just scary.
Yeah, and I do like how this list is not straightforward at all. Even though he's explained it to me and I've watched him play it, I still don't understand how it plays. But he's obviously done very well with it, and that's why I feel like I wanted to bring up this unconventional list to the stream, because with how Slave the Darkest book lists look right now before the new book, this is definitely not how they look. And
this list plays very much like your Beast of Chaos list, Matt. You have super cheap summoning, and he kind of does too. With the old book Ravagers, you select a different general every turn, and that general has the ability to bring on either Marauders, Marauder Horsemen, or a Cultist unit from the board edge. So effectively, he's just bringing in cheap waves of units. He's got that solid brick right in the center of 40 Chaos Warriors. And then, in this book, at least, the Chaos Lord, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, they're pretty decent melee options. And then they're heavily supported by the Karkadrak. So the one negative about the Karkadrak is it doesn't have any rend. So in, 2.0, the Karkadrak leaned heavily on the Rend 3 artifact, which made him a super killy, just absolute blender. So he doesn't really have that ability to break armor per se, but he just overwhelms you with bodies, and he just kind of sits there and absorbs as much damage as you can deal. So it's a really cool and interesting list.
Yeah, it's very like a techie control list, which is awesome to shout out. And he's definitely one of my picks to make top 10. And definitely he can get 4-1 with this, because someone's going to look at it and be like, I don't know what this does, which is one of his strengths.
Yeah.
Shout outs to you, Ben Hosking, from the Lost Tribe of Geeky Tees. Hope you do really well. And then, as I said before, there's, 2 more lists I also want to shout out, because I think they're interesting, or they think they're fun. If any of you guys have lists you want to shout out to, go ahead. But let us proceed with, the next one I'm thinking about. So I wouldn't really call this list techy, but I think it's a lot of fun. And this is piloted by, none other, Sons of Behemoth, piloted by no other than Ryan Inman from Tough Ground. He's one of our local guys. He's the guy that, you've probably seen on Twitter, or on one of our recordings that shouts Timber.
Yeah, good old Timber.
That guy, and he's a giant of a man too. So
yeah, he's awesome. And it's giant, so there is complexity to the list, but there's not as much complexity as the last list we were looking at. So he's running the new Smasher Tribe, and essentially what Smasher Tribe does is they get bonuses against monsters. So the baby giants get buffed with this. So in the new Sons of Behemoth book, all the bonuses mainly seems to affect babies because they want to encourage you to take more babies rather than just taking 4 big boys. So essentially, what Smasher Tribe does is it can make the Man Crusher babies fight on death if you spend a command point, and they get a fight at top bracket too. And
That's,
yeah,
that's
yeah, and then for the Man Crusher babies, instead of attacking 4 attacks on their club, if they're fighting a monster, they could go to 1 attack, 3s and 3s. I think it's gonna be Ren 1 or Ren 2, but it will be 4d6 damage against the monster. So, and imagine Fight on Death. It's pretty funny. Like, you don't think that these guys do a lot of damage, but they actually will with Fight on Death.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, and then he's running the Beast Smasher Mega Gargant. His special thing is that he's really good at hunting monsters and stuff like that, and he gets bonuses for monsters and heroes. And when he's fighting a monster, he gets 2 monstrous actions instead of 1. So if he's fighting a monster, he can suplex to slam somebody WWE style, and then roar at them or make the fight last with grapple. So he's a lot of fun. And then, like the babies, with his main club, which is 3 attacks, 5 damage a swing, 3s and 2s, -3 rend, but the rend degrades. However, if he chooses to do 1 attack and he's fighting a monster, if the wound goes through, it does 5d6 damage against the monster. So he could actually just one-shot, like, Archeon or something.
Like,
So
30.
yeah, so I was playing the Beast Smasher for fun in a TTS game played by one of our locals, Nick Garcia. The Beast Smasher was fighting Alariel. So after suplexing and grabbing her after she charged one of my giants, the Beast Smasher went into her. The wound went through, and he did 24 damage to Alariel.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I mean, the trick only works against monsters. So if you have like hordes of infantry, that won't really do anything. But it's kind of like a fun, techie like thing to do, which is why I wanted to shout it out. And his command trait is that he sees green, which is he could fight at he ignores. I think he ignores. It's either he ignores mortal wounds on a 4-up, or he fights at top bracket once per game. And then artifact and mantle of Tuscan Hordes once per game. He can make all Gargants on the field +1 hit at the start of the combat phase, which is having most of your Gargants hit on 2s is like really, really like special.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is like it hits. It's a slapper, as opposed to some other lists that are more tanky oriented.
Yeah, like this list wants to fight you, which is definitely Ryan's style of how he plays, and I love it when he shouts timber, and so does everybody. And the grand strategy I want to shout out, it's pretty easy for Gargants to make the land treble. He has to make sure he at least one giant at least has to run or charge every turn. So, yeah. I mean, spicy. There's not really much to go over else with this because everyone knows what a Kraken Eater does. Kicks an objective potentially. And the Gatebreaker is the same. He got less attacks, but he does more damage. And he has Arcane Tome. So now he's doing flat 4 damage on his club.
Yeah.
And then also, to shout out the Gatebreaker, he instead of attacking with all of his profiles, he can opt to do 1 attack on a 4-up, and it does 46 mortal wounds to anything on a 4-up. So you can either whiff the 4-up, not do any damage, or you pop the 4-up against like a Seraphon Bastiladon and you just one-shot it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like the right choice when you're fighting something with like a 1-up save, so.
Yeah. Why roll all the attacks where it won't go through, where you can just do on a 4-up 46.
Yeah. You give yourself the chance to just spike it, That's awesome little utility piece you can occasionally pull out there.
Yeah, and then, shout outs to Ryan from Tuck Proud. Can't wait to see you this weekend. And then the last list I really want to go over, before we call the stream is another guy from Tough Crowd, a friend of Ryan Inman's. His name's William Warren. He's a big fun guy. He likes to get massively drunk, and there's been several times where we think that he's gonna maybe fall on his models and hurt himself, but he's always okay. I think I'll let you guys talk about William before I go into the list. He's a stand-up.
You day 2. I'm just making sure that he's still alive and breathing because he's just a barrel of fun. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I'll never forget when I met him at the first Old Town Throwdown at Chris Doggetree's house, where he just got massively drunk, and Ryan had to keep carrying him around, and he was also at Chris Doggetree's house this year too, when we were hosting. another like the Moonshine Invitational in Thondia, which was a lot of fun. So then, yeah, let's go into his list. So he is running Legion of the First Prince, which is sadly going away with the new SCD book. So he's giving this army one last shot. This is the All Demons army. So he's running Be'lakor, a Great Unclean One, as his general with Ruinous Aura. So any units, Legion of the First Prince units, wholly within 8 inches of him, of the Great Unclean One, is 5 up ward save, because the entire army gets a 6 up ward save. And then he has Fourfold Blade. So on one of his attack profiles, any 6s to hit does D3 mortal wounds. So this guy's like a beat stick. And he has
on the Nurgling 15 attacks, right? So
he puts on the Nurglings,
which is crazy,
which is insane. So like it makes him a fighting piece, and then he's running Flaming Weapon, so he could put this on the Nurglings too. So it'll just do like an obscene amount of damage, or yeah, it's funny. And he's bonded to the Incarnate for +1 to cast. And the funny thing about the Incarnate in this list is that in Legion of the First Prince, it actually gets a 6 up ward because of certain warding.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So like, and then he's running Skull Taker. I honestly have no idea why he's running Skull Taker. I don't know what he adds to the list. I guess it's just a cheap demon hero, because I guess in Slaves of Dark, or not Slaves of Darkness, Legion of the First Prince, at the end of your movement phase, one of your demon heroes can summon a unit depending on what their like god is on a 3d6. If you do on Be'lakor, he could summon any one of the 4 chaos gods. A lesser
plus
demon.
Furies.
Yeah, Furies, and usually Be'lakor in this list would want to summon more pinks, just because 25 wounds of pinks is still annoying. Then he's running a Slaves of Darkness Demon Prince with the Armor of the Pack. So he's the old Khorne Demon Prince. So he's having charges, having runs, and Armor of the Pack lets him reroll saves. So he could potentially be on a 2-up rerolling saves on a 5-up ward if he's by the general.
Yeah.
Unkillable, and then he's running 3 units of Flesh Hounds. They're cheap, they're reliable, and they can unbind spells. And they're being run as Expert Conquerors, so they will count as 15 models on an objective. So that's nice. Yeah.
So it's a fun list. Like I have no idea if it's good or not. It's like impossible to assess how good it is, but I'm really excited to see how it actually plays on the tabletop. How he's going to pilot it. So I love the clean one with all that combo is hilarious. Like.
Right. Traditionally, Legion of the First Prince are more chess style armies versus the normal smash and bash. So when you have good pilots fielding this army, it becomes a total like blue deck style control. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Kairos lost his piece that was really important for that. So I see. So he played which is just a different style. So I'm really curious how it's going to actually play out, because I haven't seen it since Kairos got changed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a control beat stick style, and I think Legion of the First Prince did really well in the last JHB because it was all monsters, and usually you just run a bunch of big monsters with Legion of the First Prince, which is why they always did really well, and they had like the highest win rate during the last JHB. They have like a 62, 63, because they literally can also not only get all the battle tactics easily with their monsters, but they can also deny you while not having to kill you. That's another trick of this army. This army does not have to kill you to win. However, in this GHB that we're in, there's a lot of like kill battle tactics and more. This GHB Courage is a lot more killing, which I think Legion of the First Prince definitely struggles with, and also with bounty hunters, their chaff units just get deleted right away. So I think that's why you see Legion of the First Prince, go down in strength and like win rate for this new GHB. So it's really awesome to see that Williams willing to take these guys out for one last dance, because I've seen him play it for like the past 2 years, and he's always done like well with it, and he's a fun guy. So happy he's coming.
Well, those are some awesome lists. There's one thing I just wanted to mention before we close this out that I thought was kind of interesting. There's a strangely large amount of Nurgle fly spam lists at this tournament, despite the nerfs, which I find interesting. I think there's 3 of them. And I was
about 3 of them, yeah.
Because each of them went up by like 100 points or more, and they lost a lot of their lot of stuff, and they're still playing it. So I do think it is still a solid army, but I was just surprised to see it, I guess, after such a harsh nerf. So I just wanted to point that out as kind of an interesting little thing I noticed about this tournament.
I mean, honestly, at worst, the Nurgle fly list lose at least 1 unit of flies, and I think they were just too cheap before. So even though they lose 1 unit of flies, I think the amount of wounds and speed they could put out is insane. Because I thought they were going to nerf the pre-game move, but they still kept it. So
Yeah, I mean, like I still think it's a good army. I think it's just like a 50-50 army now, not a 57% win rate type army. Like it's still good. That's still like 50-50 is not something to complain about. So
yeah,
it's kind of good to see it. I'm kind of happy to see that people are sticking to their guns because they actually enjoy it. It's not just too powerful. So that's kind of a cool thing to see.
and I
Mhm.
feel like
Yeah.
also what keeps sorry, Gabe, go on.
Oh, well, one thing I was going to mention is, you got some good Nurgle players who are showing up. Unfortunately, the Nurgle daddy himself is not going to make it, Mr. Barker. But you still have Matt, the other Matt, showing up. You have AJ, who's a really strong player. He played in 2 tournaments, 2 GTs, and has gone 4-1 in both of those. So he's a really good up and coming player. So he's playing the fly spam list. So I think that yes, they did lose a little bit from the points increase, but you still have the same solid people playing them. So it's really not anything to look over. You don't want to give them just a different glance, like, oh, whatever their increase now, but they're still strong. So
Yeah, and I think to talk a little bit more about Alec, his background's from Magic, which is like our co-host here, Aaron, and I think that's why he's like doing really well because for some reason those skills from Magic just translate to Age of Sigmar, which is really
It's
interesting.
weird how well they do, honestly, because it's a card game versus tabletop. But like most stuff I learned in Magic, competing so much for so long, transferred really well. The general strategic philosophy. So you do see a lot of like people who are really good at Magic coming over to Warhammer and doing pretty damn well. So yeah, it is kind of a funny thing. Evan, I used to compete, I think, also at Magic.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Also Greg too. So
Also, yeah.
yeah, so I think Alec, he's definitely one of my top 10 lists. He also has 5-0 potential with that list because he like just generally plays really well. He knows his rules, and it's just like overall like awesome. So yeah, and then also to shout out the other Nurgle Fly player here, I think it's being pilot. Well, actually, I think we have 4 because one's being piloted by Wayne Kaufman. He's like an older gentleman from the LA community. He's generally like pretty cool. And then also the other fly list, unless I'm wrong, please correct me if you're watching the stream, Kyle. Kyle Norman, he's from Green Tower Games, and he's also playing a Nurgle fly list. And he does pretty well with it too. So yeah, shout out to all of you.
Matt Jones is actually playing Plague Bearer spam, which is fun. He's been doing all sorts of crazy Nurgle lists and seeing what's possible with this book, and his list is pretty interesting. I have no idea if it's good or not, but it's pretty interesting at the very least. So
I feel like if Bounty Hunters was not a thing, it'd be a lot stronger. But because he's been playing Nurgle for a long time, I appreciate that he's trying. He's just not like defaulting to like fly spam list, which is the easy way to do it. Because I feel like there's definitely a lot more play in the book than just fly spam.
Yeah,
You just figure it out.
He technically didn't do well, but he got like 1 win, 3 draws, and a minor loss, which is like weird. But like his list was crazy. Like, and he was like 1 point from winning 3 games in a row. So it's like he almost went 4-1, even though he only got 1 win. It's kind of funny, but he's been doing pretty good with these really crazy lists. So
yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. Oh yeah, also thanks for correcting me, Kyle Norman. You're not playing flies, you're playing Blight Kings, and that's another like unconventional way to play. And even though Bounty Hunters kind of makes that playstyle hard, I commend you for like trying it. And I feel like when Bounty Hunters goes away in the next GHB, we will be definitely seeing a lot more Nurgle lists that do not involve flies because 10 blocks of Blight Kings or Plague Bear or 20 Plague Bears without Bounty Hunters is really hard to shift.
also worth noting, though, when I was going over all the lists in this event, there's not as many bounty hunters as you've been seeing. I think because people have been cutting back so hard on Galician veterans that people are also cutting back on bounty hunters. So this might be a chance for a Galician veteran list to do well at this event. We'll see if that holds, but I just kind of noticed that going over a lot of stuff. So
I didn't know that. Interesting. Okay, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what a event with not a lot of bounty hunters how it stacks up in the end.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Well, all we do is wait and see.
Yeah, I was gonna say normally we have a whole bunch of stats flying out, but I guess our stats man is on vacation this week.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
All right. Well, I think unless you guys have other things to add, I think that wraps it up pretty cleanly.
No?
okay. I feel like this is spicy. If you have one person to name as who is going to be master of the hoedown, who is it going to be? You can even choose yourself. Go for it. I'm the TO, so I'm unbiased, so I can pick anybody. But yeah, which is one of your guys' who is going to be the master of the dance?
It's kind of it's. I normally don't feel this way, but I actually do think that I have a very solid chance because I think my list is just perfect for the meta of this tournament. So I actually think I might end up being master of the hoedown. There's a lot of really strong players, but just the way that my list is positioned here. But there are a few lists that could definitely just knock me out of contention for that. But I actually, for the first time in a while, feel like I really have a solid chance of doing that. I normally wouldn't name myself, but in this case, just because of how the list lined up, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, also, your list has the answer to a lot of the Iron Blasters, which I know will do really well. And Tom Guan is coming, who's, he's a part of Team America, and, he's won, like, several GTs on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my pick is still going to be Greg. I just think he's such a great player with an amazing list, and the two combined, he's always a measure 3 times, cut once type of person. So he's going to send those pigs and that Maw Crusher in a strategical way where it's just going to completely overwhelm the majority of the lists. So
Yeah.
I'm rooting for him to get his first 5-0.
I was talking to people, and like if anyone's going to knock me out, it's going to be his list and him, like for sure. Because we've played a lot of really tight games, and that list is one of the few that I think is really good against my list. So we'll see.
Man, it's really hard because I think if you didn't pick yourself, Aaron, I was gonna pick you as a potential like champion because you have an answer to a lot of lists. If I had to seriously think about who would my number one be for winning the Noogvember hoedown, it was between two people in my head. Well, one of them I was thinking of Sam. It requires him showing up day 2, so that's
that's a risk.
so I'm gonna have to give it to Ian
Day 2.
McLeese, who is the OG ogre player in our community, along with Max. But I think for nominating who is probably has a good chance of taking the hoedown, I'm giving it to Ian because he's piloted that ogre list longer than anybody else, so that gives him a massive advantage of how to play rather than being the bandwagoners that we have. Love you, Sam. Pew pew pew.
I would love to see Ian go 5-0 because he plays at that caliber consistently. His list was a little bit on the weaker end just because of the rules, the book. But like now he's got the really powerful rules at his hands. I think I kind of agree. He's up there in like for sure one of the top choices.
Yeah, and I mean, I think experience-wise, you played a lot of games with him, Gabe, for years. He's played a lot of War Machine and Warhammer Fantasy. So, and he used to compete a lot apparently against Tom Guan too in those games.
Yeah, so. he was always a top pick for Warmahordes, consistently podiuming and always running the actual events. I think he just got tired of winning, so he just started running the events. But yeah, he's a solid player, been wargaming for a very long time. And like you guys mentioned, he's been running this list for a while now and knows the intricacies of it. So now that the actual units have gotten a glow up, he's going to project himself much higher as well.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope to see everybody at Noogvember. Say hi. If you've never met me, I think I've met everyone, but maybe not. Just say hi to me. I'm super friendly. So, yeah, that's me. If you guys want to say anything before we close?
Yeah. So I guess I'll leave it to Gabe.
I mean, thanks for having me on. It's not always common to have the painters on, so thank you very much for having me on. So,
I mean, we gotta have our one of our local ITC hobbyists on here from 2021 before everybody else started playing the game again for COVID.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we also love showing new guests, so we're really happy that you joined us, and hey, maybe you should join us again on other streams.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, and I'm the one TOing the event, so I'm really happy to host my very first GT ever. I've been hosting a lot of RTTs this year, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. So, but aside from playing the game and competing in it, I really enjoy fostering our SoCal community, because before, I think last year or 2 years ago, we only had 10 people every month, Saturday or Sunday RTTs, and now we really exploded. So, and also because of when I traveled to Nova earlier this year, because I saw how massive the East Coast Age of Sigmar community is, I really want to have that same growth for SoCal too and the West Coast. So yeah, by starting this first small town Throwdown GT, we can keep growing our scene every event and every year. So yeah.
Excellent.
Well said. Bye-bye.
Yeah, peace out.
Thanks, everybody.
Woo!